Okay, I admit it. I cheated. There was 2 whole weeks in the middle of March I didn't read. When I did my February wrap up, it wasn't the end of the month. I missed out on one of the books that I didn't tell you guys I read. And I'm recording this on April 2nd, and I've already finished 2 books in April. So I'm going to tell you about the 8 books I read in the end of February, all of March, and in April. And I am really excited for this video because out of these 8 books, there are some of my favorite books of all time, some I think everyone needs to be aware of, and the 2 books that I rated the lowest are still important books that I want to talk about because one's by an author that everyone loves and is connected to a series that everyone loves, and the other one is by one of my favorite authors and not an author that is ever talked about in the fantasy world because he's not a fantasy author, but he wrote a fantasy book. So alongside wrapping up all those 8 reads, I have a little book haul for you, and of course, we have to do my April TBR and go over our book club read for the month of April, completely free, link down in the description, join our book club on Fable, just a fun place to read some books. We did one of these ones here in March. I had a really interesting time. I just finished it in April. Badly done by me. I guess that happens when you have a holiday and don't read for 2 weeks. And yes, you normally do read more on holidays. I had other things to focus on. Now, if you love fantasy books, make sure you subscribe to the channel. We talk about all the best and worst and most interesting books in the fantasy genre here. Like this video, it helps out the channel so much. And leave a comment. Let me know, what were the best books you read in March? What were the worst books you read in March? And what do you have lined up to read in April? And let's dive into the books I smashed through in the last month and a bit. So the first one I read was the best book I read all year. There is very few books I've read that are better than The Trouble with Peace by Joe Abercrombie, the second book in his Age of Madness trilogy, the 8th book overall in his First Law universe. As you may guess, I rated this a 5 out of 5. I listened to this one on audio. I only listened to the last 4 books of First Law, all the others I read, and Stephen Pacey, as advertised, one of the greatest narrators there is, just really great voices for all his characters. And first thing that blew me away with not only A Trouble with Peace, but the First Law universe as a whole in particular, very much in particular, the Age of Madness, Joe is very efficient with his words. Trouble with Peace, 22-hour audiobook. Wisdom of Crowds, 24-hour audiobook. I'm very used to 30, 40-plus hour audiobooks in the fantasy world, and the amount of story that happens in the Age of Madness trilogy in each of these novels is insane for how short these audiobooks are. Yes, still a long audiobook in the scope of books in general, but in the fantasy world, very, very efficient. Absolutely love the audiobook, but it was the story that I loved. The Trouble with Peace, my favorite of the First Law world. I'll give you a little spoiler for that later in the video. I also finished The Wisdom of Crowds and Sharp Ends in the month. We'll talk about those all together, though I didn't finish them in order, just like that. But the big battle we got with The Trouble with Peace, seeing my favorite character in the series get his big moment to shine. I just could not put this book down, and neither could I put down The Wisdom of Crowds once I read that. So reviewing these books together, both 5 out of 5 books for me, but The Trouble with Peace just a bit higher because of that battle, and we got more of my favorite character in book 2 than in the other books of the series. But both of them bled perfectly into the next. And it finished off the series in a very Abercrombie way, where there's not really a happy ending. There's a very begrudging, bittersweet ending. And there is room for more, which did leave me a little unsatisfied, but I feel like if I was left completely satisfied, it wouldn't be the end of an Abercrombie book. Another book I just finished reading yesterday ends in just the most heartbreaking, gut-wrenching fashion, and I love it for that, no matter how much I hate how sad it is. So, although I was left unsatisfied, I kind of like being left unsatisfied. So if you couldn't tell, Age of Madness, my favorite trilogy of all the trilogies in the First Law universe. The characters were my favorite, getting the kids of the main characters from the first trilogy, they were done super well. And coming into this trilogy, because of the 6 previous books, the whole world was just filled out. So we have our union where we spend most of our time in the first trilogy and the last trilogy. But now, because of all the other books, we've spent time in all the other surrounding countries. We've got a huge cast of characters. We don't get in any of those characters' heads. We only get new character POVs in the Age of Madness, or in each of the standalones, which I really appreciate. When Joe does that, he gives us a character. We get a great story with them, but then they keep on living their lives in this world, but we don't get in their head again. We get their kids, or we get someone around them, and it just makes the world bigger, and we can understand what that character's doing because we've been their head before, but we get to see a new perspective and a new story, and it was just a blast. So we get a huge build-up world. We get the industrial revolution aspect, where the world's moved on from where it was at the end of the first trilogy. It's the age of industry, and now people are pushing for social revolution. So the whole new, like, so all the new world building elements with all the new industries and technologies being invented was just super fun. Obviously, with Joe's work, it's the characters we love, just getting in their heads and working through things with them and getting their little daily dramas. And then on the outside, there's just a huge, massive, epic fantasy story that has the potential of kingdoms collapsing going on. That just makes for such a rich, vivid, alive story. Absolutely love First Law so much. Hey, sorry to interrupt the video. I just wanted to mention, if you want to support the channel a little extra, I've got a Patreon, links down in the description. If you want to get book reviews upon me finishing books, book vlogs with spoiler thoughts, and a little private Discord to have a chat in, link down in the description. Enjoy the rest of the video. Then just at the end of the month, I finished up reading Sharp Ends. So this is the short story collection that you'd typically read between books 6 and 7, so right before the Age of Madness trilogy. I skipped it because I just wanted to go straight into the Age of Madness after Red Country. I just wanted to do as much Abercrombie as possible. I am in love with Abercrombie at the moment. I can't wait for his new book, Devils, to come out, and I'm probably going to check out his series Half King very soon. Just, yeah, everything he's written I've loved, and I can't wait for more. So I read Sharp Ends once I'd finished all the books. You guys really hyped it up for me. You guys shouldn't have hyped it up so much for me. Yeah, I was disappointed because it didn't live up to the hype, and no one warned me that the majority of the short stories in Sharp Ends are about two completely new characters. So yes, we get some really fun little short stories about our favorite characters and the people they were before the books we got them in, and that was great. We only got like one little short story for a couple of those characters. It was in someone else's head, so we didn't get back in their perspective again, which I appreciate. But if I'm reading a short story collection, I don't want to get two whole new characters that just go and have like their own adventures across like way too many of these short stories when I just picked up this book to get more of the characters I love. So that was disappointing, but it's an Abercrombie book. So as a whole, I wasn't disappointed because I still had a good time. Even those new characters were good characters with interesting stories. I was just hoping for more of the ones that we'd already got to know. But Abercrombie, love it. But circling back, the first book I read in April, A Short Stay in Hell by Stephen L. Peck. I liked this one so much, I found an excuse to make a video for it. So this is a 100-page book about a guy that wakes up in hell. It's a really funny start, and we basically very quickly find out that this hell isn't permanent. You can get out of it. There's a potential to work your way out of this hell. So he finds himself in this hell, and he ends up spending some time there, and we get some very interesting like stories of his life, of his time jumps in this space, and it's very much a sort of book that will leave you with a lot more questions than answers. It'll get you questioning a lot of things about religion. If there's a hell, would it be a place that you're always going to be? Is it eternal damnation, or do you have your potential to work out of there? And how would a human spend eternity? And a lot of other fun, and a lot of other fun little things that just go on in just 100 pages. So it's a very compelling novel that you can sit down and read in a weekend, in an afternoon, and just be like, whoa, that was weird. That left me some weird questions. Then you can move on. But it's a fun little quirky time with really good comedy at the start. It's very easy to read, and it gets very sad at some points. It's crazy how much happens in that 100 pages. So talking about just how much crazy stuff can happen in a short page count, Children of Dune, the third book in the Dune universe by Frank Herbert. I absolutely loved this. This just felt like a masterclass in writing. The amount of different things that Herbert can do, the amount of different layers of story he can have on the surface, like level where, my spaced out, poor attention span exists, just on that surface level of the story, just really compelling court politics in a huge space opera. Interesting new characters in a super interesting world. The world building just kept leveling up from the previous two books here. Some real weird and wacky things that were just wonderful and just super interesting. Just that political maneuvering with a bit of action. And then that deeper level and that amount of philosophy that Frank adds into his books that I'd really have to read it a second time to even dissect on a further level. But going through, just different forms of religion discussions, self-sacrifice, all the different government structures and how people should be ruled. There is a lot of layers to the book that you can dive into, and just his writing style with how we are able to get into everyone's head, how we are able to get a lot of perspectives, how he's always putting in quotes and scripture as the chapter breaks. And they're not big long chapters, they're very short chapters, that it's more like a Terry Pratchett book where the story just continues to go. And we get in everyone's head, so we get everyone's perspective. We get a really interesting writing style that always leaves you thinking more. Couldn't have had a better time with Children of Dune. I love where it left off. It could be a very nice closing point for the series, but I'm just going to do one more Dune book for now. I'm going to go into God Emperor of Dune, where I hear that really wraps up the story of the Atreides. And then I think someday, not in the too far distant future, I'm going to reread the first 4 Dune books and then dive into the next 2, because I always hear, just read the first 4, they're the best ones. But Frank's just so good at writing. I want to read all the books he put out, not the other books by his son, but very interested and invested to get further into Dune. And Frank's writing, purely phenomenal. And I think Dune, once I get back to reading those first few books, I think it will probably be in my top 10 series of all time next time. Just can't believe how great of an author he is. Just so talented. Then jumping to the last book I finished in March, before I had my 2 April reads I finished off, we have The Ships of Merior by Janny Wirtz, book 2 in the Wars of Light and Shadow. I believe this series should be the gold standard for classic fantasy. Now, that's a weird statement to make, because the first book in this series came out over 30 years ago and the last book only came out last year. So it's only just been finished. But everything this book, this series encompasses is just the best of what you want out of a classic fantasy tale. The writing style is so beautiful and poetic, not a word is wasted. Now, yes, you can give this book or this series the critique that the writing is dense and overly flourishing. And yes, I 100% understand where those critiques are coming from. There is a lot of language Janny uses that we don't use in our day-to-day base. I have learned a lot of new words through reading The Wars of Light and Shadow, and this is not a series I can read very quickly. This is not a book I can fly through. This is the language, the writing in this book is like the writing I have to read the slowest. But I just feel more immersed into this world when I'm reading this than I do in almost any other series I've read. There's very few other authors that can capture my attention, give me a cozy feeling, but have my eyes just hooked to the page and have me lost in another world. The world building is huge. The world in this series is massive, and you should check out the website for Janny's books, because she has this map laid out with tons of pictures filled out, so you can go around, zoom in, and see, oh, what's this thing over here, and what's that look like? It's a huge filled-in world. This book covers about 3 years of time, and you do get long chapters of Janny's books. This is about an 18-chapter book. There's about 480-something pages with a lot of words on each page. But what I love, what Janny does, each chapter, you get a distinct story. Something happens and you work through it in the chapter. Each chapter is broken into multiple sections. So you'll get like a title break mid-chapter. And then once you get to the end of a chapter, you get like 3 lines or like 3 paragraphs of building upon stories that you're going to get in the next chapter or later in the book of, oh, what's happening with this one side character that's off with those witches that we saw a few chapters ago, and oh, what's happening at this town that we're about to appear at, and then, oh, our character's gone and done this, and then boom, next chapter you get lost in a whole nother scene. There's perhaps been a time jump because a lot happens in this book with the spanning of about 3 years of time. You might, if we're about to get an army on the move, we might get the important story of what forces the army to move and a little bit of their story on the road, but we're not going to waste chapters upon chapters just on this road. A lot of story gets covered in this book. So the writing's beautiful. The world's huge. The chapter structures are interesting. The characters. We get POVs from both sides of this conflict, the wars of light and shadow, and you can really feel and understand for the characters on both sides. And so the character work is really done. You really just get a deep understanding for why our bad person is the way he is, though he's not a bad person. I really deeply feel for him, understand for him, and am cheering for him, though I know I'm supposed to be cheering for the other guy, which I'm also cheering for him too. And I'm like, oh, I hate this conflict. And I think that's exactly how Johnny wants you to feel. I love this story. I love this plot. If you were just looking to slow down and get lost in a huge epic fantasy world, I highly recommend checking out The Wars of Light and Shadow by Johnny Wirtz. Start with book 1, The Curse of the Mistwraith. It's a great starting point. It's one of my favorite chapter 1s in a series. Then after that, check out the novella The Gallant. If you're not hooked by then, okay, it's not for you. But if you're willing to slow down, get lost in some poetic, beautiful writing, you need to check out The Wars of Light and Shadow by Johnny Wirtz. Then, in keeping with things epic and things that you have to take your time with and focus on, I finished Deadhouse Gates yesterday by Stephen Erickson, the second book in Malazan, Book of the Fallen. Deadhouse Gates has a storyline in it that is one of my favorite storylines in all of fantasy. Now, quite often when you get told about Deadhouse Gates, you get told it takes place in a whole new continent and you get a whole new storyline to follow. That gets confusing. I don't think that's true. In Malazan, we're following the Malazan Empire. In book 1, we're on a continent where the Malazan Empire is very close to conquering all of it, and we get to see them try to conquer the last 2 cities on this continent. In book 2, we get some follow over characters. Some of the characters we see in book 1 travel across to another continent that the Malazan Empire has already conquered, and as this continent is trying to quell a rebellion that is brewing. And this was my second time reading Deadhouse Gates. I loved it the first time. I loved it even more the second time as I got a deeper appreciation for all the other storylines that went around my favorite one. And I got even a deeper appreciation for my favorite one, just knowing where it was all leading to. One of the most saddest and crushing endings to a book I have ever read. Actually, no, scratch that. The most saddest and crushing ending to a book I've read. Just absolutely gut-wrenching. I was devastated by it. My girlfriend says it was I was very disappointed in her when she said that. But to say the least, I'm in love with Malazan. I cannot wait to read Memories of Ice. I haven't read that one yet, so it's going to be all new for me. It's a 43-hour audiobook, so I'll probably immersion read it. Stephen Erickson's writing is on par with like a Joe Abercrombie in just like the gritty, real feeling and really good humor. Like the humor in Malazan is definitely an underrated aspect of it. Like it's really funny, but also very serious. And the world building, so huge. I just love how huge and how filled out the world is, and just how much history takes place. Like the continent we're on in Deadhouse Gates, you can just feel how many different cultures and civilizations have occupied this lands over the years. How many different of these elder races from these lands have taken on. I love these warrens that we have, like these powerful channels of magic that you can travel through, and all the things that happen in there. There is just so much depth to the world building, so many great characters, so many really good character journeys, some crushing character journeys. Malazan really is just one of those high points of fantasy as well. If you're looking for more classic, a bit slower, a bit more traditional, Wars of Light and Shadow. If you're looking for just everything just crazy, dialed up, huge fantasy, kind of modern, like that's Malazan. Just 2 ends of the spectrum, both the peak of just brain power. So the hardest part of this month was having Wars of Light and Shadow, Deadhouse Gates, saying Wars of Light and Shadow, Malazan, and Dune all on at the same time. That was the worst decision I've ever made. I will never read more than one of those at a time again because they all require extra brain power. So I feel like I've gained IQ having finished these books, not having them going on at one time because of just how much they consume my brain. But so incredible. Then I read one last book to finish up the month. It was our book club book that I didn't finish until May and get to till the 31st of March. And that was Troll Mountain by Matthew Riley. Not a fantasy author. Matthew Riley is more of an action thriller sort of writer. I grew up reading Matthew Riley with his action stories. His stories are centered around a character called Scarecrow, where it's like international spy stuff and just good military action. I saw that in 2015, he wrote a fantasy book. And this is like a very young book. This reads younger than The Hobbit and Harry Potter. This is something you could read to a 5-year-old, 6-year-old, and they would probably understand it. And this is what he himself describes as an action fantasy fable. Like, it very much gives some interesting lessons on authority and questioning long-held beliefs and going out and learning new things and being inventive and taking courage. It's a hero's journey. We get a young man going on an adventure to save his sister, and to say the least, he has to go up a troll. He has to go up into a mountain that has a huge troll society and do some really fun stuff. This is just a really fun, cozy read. It's exactly what it is. It's a hero's tale. It reads very young, but there's some great messages in there. Like, it's very fably. There's a really, really good role of action, of course. Matthew Riley, just the king of action. Really fun action sequences. Obviously, it's a bit, unrealistic in the amount of stuff that happens and what our character is able to do, but it's a really fun time, and I'm very happy I checked it out. And it's a good reminder for me to go back and read some more Matthew Riley now that I'm an adult, because I haven't read all his books, but every time I've read a book by him, I've had a good time. But with that, now we have a little bit of a book haul. So the other day, I was at the supermarket and I was just checking out the secondhand store near where I get all my groceries, and, well, I found these 2 Jenny Wirtz books. I'm like, no way. How often do you find Jenny Wirtz at a secondhand store? And I picked them up. Books are, oh no, my bad. I picked up these 2 books. Books 1 and 2 in the Cycle of Fire trilogy by Jenny Wirtz. I was like, that's crazy. I'm so happy I got my hands on these. And then I was on a holiday with my missus, and we went past another secondhand store. I'm like, let's check it out. And they had this book. So completely wild. I got the completed trilogy just by going to some secondhand stores. Got it all for under $10, and you can never get enough Jenny Wirtz on your shelf. Clearly, because I was given a book for my birthday, a short story collection. Jenny Wirtz, That Way Lies Camelot, one of the prettiest covers I've ever seen. Absolutely love that. I love Jenny Wirtz, so that was a very nice gift from my missus. But she got me an even better gift, because, as you guys all know, I have a favorite series of all time. And that series is The Empire of the Vampire by Jay Kristoff. And we know I've got my cheap $10 book on my shelf, but she got me this special edition. Naked hardback, really beautiful De Leon crest on the front. Quote, "One day as a lion is worth 10,000 as a lamb" on the back. And just really good quality paper. But all these illustrations are done with color, which I believe is the only one of these special editions done with all the illustrations in color. Correct me if I'm wrong, but just, look at how stunning these pictures are. Such good quality. And you guys know we get Empire of the Dawn in November. I'm of course going to be reading books 1 and 2 in the lead up to that release. So I'm definitely going to be reading this. I cannot wait. So that was my book haul for the month of March. Now, what am I going to be reading in April? Well, I've got some series I'm going to be continuing. So the first one I have to continue is Malazan. That's big priority this year, is getting through the big fantasy series that I've already started. So Memories of Ice, we're diving into that. The God Emperor of Dune, I've got to get to the last book of Dune that I intend on reading this year. Got to get to that. Got a buddy read lined up for both of those. Very excited to get to that. Now, The War Host of Vastmark. This is the next book in the Wars of Light and Shadow series by Jenny Wirtz, and it was written to be the other half of the Ships of Merior. This is supposed to be one book, but the publishers broke it up into two. And how nice is this artwork done by Janny? So I may start this if I finish Memories of Ice and Children of Dune, but I will not start it if I'm still reading those two because of the amount of brain power it takes to read each of those books. So those are the direct continuations of big series I'm intending to read. I'll be reading in the month of April. Now, our book club read, really important. We're going to be doing some Discworld. We're going to be reading Mort by Terry Pratchett. So this is the first novel in his Death sub-series. The audiobook is 8 hours. So if you want to join in on that, link down in the description, completely free. This is not a sponsored thing by me. It's just a book club where we go and check out new books. And Mort, very excited to be reading that with you. And Mort will not be the only Terry Pratchett I'll be reading. I'll be also returning to the Night's Watch sub-series that I started last year. I read Guards, and now we're reading book 2 in that sub-series. I'll be reading Men at Arms. I've already started this one. After reading so many big, heavy, dense books, I wanted something fun, easy, whimsical, witty, comedic, and that is what I've been getting with Men at Arms. I'm 20% into it. It's so fun being back with the cast of Carrot and Grimes, and absolute blast. I'm definitely going to be continuing on with a lot of Discworld this year, and it looks like I'm just doing all sequels in the month of April because I'm going to see if I can read the entire 20-man trilogy by Robin Hobb as well. So Fool's Errand, The Golden Fool, and Fool's Fate. I will do these on audio, so I'll be listening to it. So if I said I read it, it's just an easy word to talk about consuming books. I absolutely have loved everything by Hobb so far. These books are a little bit shorter than the previous trilogy, which I was able to do in a month. So I am very excited for April. I can't wait to dive into all these incredible classic and modern fantasy books. We're just really diving into it, really smashing through all the series I've started, which is my big goal this year, is to finish things I've started before I start new things. So it looks like we're going to be doing a lot of that in April. And there's one more book I forgot to mention that I've also already started. And this one is an indie book. It just got republished. The book is called The Price of Power by Michael McKell. And I've read the prologue in the first chapter, and the writing is so beautiful. Just that perfect amount of descriptiveness. Very much feels that Game of Thronesy sort of vibe. We've got a prologue that was so perfectly done. The prologue kicks off with the story of right at the end of a rebellion, and that takes place 64 years before our book. So like we've got some rebels that have reconquered their own land, and where they land, and now we're picking up 64 years after they've established something new, and I just can't wait to see where it goes. Looks like I've got some descendants of those impressive figures we saw in the prologue. Really exciting, and the really exciting thing about The Price of Power is it just got re-released today. It came out a little while ago, but Michael's redone the covers, and just today, the 2nd of April, he's re-released it. I'm super excited to be diving into it, like as it gets re-released. He's already got book 2 lined up, and I'm very excited just based off what I've already read. The writing is very nice, and I've heard some very good things from mutual friends that have reread it when it was previously released. But that is all from me. Thank you so much for watching this video. Make sure you tell me what you read in March. What were the best books you read in March? What were the worst books you read in March? And what have you got lined up for April? Have a great day.